How Sex Drives Evolution by Jason Wadley.
Jeffrey Aglugab.
Stephanie Castro.
Today we'll be talking about how traits all come with a cost which reduce survival. Some traits increase some aspect of survival and reduce other parts. There is always a trade-off. Next, we'll talk about sexual dimorphisms. In quotes, violate evolutionary theory. Sexual dimorphisms, in Greek, mean two forms, is where a trait for a male and female differ. We will then talk about female choice and how that has driven evolution, since the majority of species having females be the ultimate decider in reproduction. We'll then talk about why sex, and then the breaking the rules of mating systems and sexual dimorphisms, also breaking rules of gender role reversals, and also what are the direct and indirect benefits of choosing your mate, and then evidence of why females choose males with better genes. And finally, we'll end with the sensory bias model. Mating types and costs. The currency in selection is successful reproduction. So, is reproduction more important than survival? Well, mostly males are differing in traits, while affecting their survival. To answer this phenomena, we must take the standpoint of reproduction being more important than survival. If it is more important for a male to mate with a female, we now see why there is a trade-off between traits. There are two types of sexual selection: direct competition between males and female choosiness. But first, sexual selection, defined by Darwin, is selection that increases an individual's chance to getting a mate. For example, widow birds, differing in tail length. Female widow birds have shown more preference for longer tails and less for shorter tail widow birds. Since there is a preference for certain tail length, those males with longer tails will mate more and have higher chance of creating offspring with similar alleles. The trade-off is that the longer tail males may not be able to evade predators as easily as shorter-tailed males. This shows that with an increased reproduction rate, the result of less survival doesn't have much effect. The widow bird's mating is an example of female choosiness. This is one type of sexual selection, and it is when a female chooses the mate based on certain appealing traits, which could be color, size, or some other physical display. The second type of selection is direct competition, where the males of a certain species physically fight with one another for access to mating with a female. The figure to the right shows two examples of widow birds. The bottom example is a longer tail widow bird compared to the top. Gametic competition. Post-mating competition. Even after the males fight for mating with a female, that particular female may mate with other males, making the sperm from either male fight for fertilizing the female's eggs. To prevent this, many males will guard the female from other males, trying to court the female. Some males may use defensive weapons to rid the sperm in their female mates. They do this by replacing the other male's sperm with their own. One technique is the penis scoop, which damselflies use to scoop sperm out of a female with the use of their pointy spines on their penis. Many have asked why traits are not evolving so drastically since they are being highly selected for. The answer is not very known, but some may speculate that whichever trait is being selected for during reproduction may have such a trade-off in lifespan of the individual that is creating the fixation for that trait to be slow and gradual.
Why sex? Sexual reproduction between male and female individual makes diploid offspring that comes from a haploid sperm and egg. It is different for those individuals who reproduce asexually, who makes identical copies of themselves. An example of an asexual reproduction is when a female individual, such as fishes and lizards, reproduces parthenogenetically. These female produce eggs that develops into an offspring without being fertilized. Female would make daughters, and the daughters themselves are able to produce daughters. This would result into a selection against sexual reproduction and male individuals due to the fact that they are no longer needed for reproduction, but it hasn't happened yet. For billions of years, sexual reproduction is the main form of reproduction for the vast majority of Earth's species. So why hasn't parthenogenesis replaced sexual reproduction? because an important aspect of sexual reproduction is about random shuffling of genes, which produces a new combination of genes in the offspring. By joining favored genes, there would be a higher chance for the offspring to deal with their environment. Sexual reproduction leads to sexual selection. There are differences between male sperm and female egg cell. Males are able to produce high quantities of sperm cells, while females produce a set quantities of egg cells. This causes a conflict of interest when it comes to choosing a mate. Males are able to mate again and again with different females. Females are different because their interests are more into their eggs and offspring. They tend to pick the best father to fertilize their limited number of eggs. The intersexual relationship or choosiness of the female results in two males competing with each other. A male that is more attractive and or vigorous are likely to be chosen by a female to fertilize her eggs. This male behavior falls under the definition of law of battle, the direct competition between males to leave their genes to the next generation. For example, the male peacock's feathers are used to attract female peacocks, and the female's preference that drives the evolution for the favorable trait. Breaking the rules, mating system and sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism is when there are two forms of morphology in a species. Differences between male and female. For example, size difference between male and female favors the male to a bigger size than female. Mating system is the number of mating partners. Monogamous, only one mating partner. Polygamous, more than one mating partner. Sexual dimorphism exists in many socially monogamous species. Appearances are deceiving. One species may appear to be monogamous, but they are truly polygamous. For example, the fairy wren of Australia from afar appeared to be monogamous, but social male and female take responsibility for their young and also both have taken matters of defending their territory. But when it comes to reproduction, the gray doll female mates with other iridescent blue males rather than their social male counterpart. Sexual selection is also at play here, meaning that males are competing, and also this means that males also vary with physical appearance. There's a strong correlation that suggests that an extreme dimorphism of a species is likely to be polygamous over species that have both male and female that look like each other tend to be monogamous. Breaking the rules, gender role reversal. What if the behaviors of male and female are switched? We rarely see this type of situation, but we would see sexual dimorphism favoring the females in terms of phenotypical trait that would help their reproductive success over another individual, and their responsibility of parenting is now handled by male. For example, the seahorses take on this role reversal. The male seahorse fertilizes the female egg, and then after, the male seahorse takes the fertilized egg in his pouch or tail. The role reversal also affects the ratio of male to female, being that there are more females in the population, so that we would see an intersexual relation between the females. Also, the females, since there is competition, the variation are greater, and that means that the males are choosing the female to mate with since there are less males.
Why choose? Direct and indirect benefits. Females are the choosy ones, but how do they choose? What exactly are they looking at and why? Both Wallace and Darwin made their own observations why, but Darwin seemed to have the closest guess. His answer was that females were choosing on pure aesthetics. Though this does explain part of it, it does not give the whole answer. Preferences aren't random, and they may have probably evolved by natural selection. A female is benefited in both ways by choosing a particular male, either directly by helping her during childcare, therefore producing healthier young, who can then be ready to reproduce and carry on the genes, or indirectly by choosing the male that has better genes than other males, therefore giving those great genes to their offspring, who will then grow up to be carriers of great genes and reproduce. Certain features in males are indicators to the females of whether the male would provide large direct or indirect benefits. Female preferences that give direct benefits. One example of direct benefits at work is the example of the house finch of North America. Females are brown and males have bright colors on their head and chest or breast. Males do provide parental care after the eggs hatch, but how does the female know which male to choose that will provide better parental care? There does seem to be a preference for the brighter colored finches. These tend to feed their young more often than pale colored ones. This directly affects how their young survive and are able to pass down their genes. What does their brightness have to do with bringing more food? Brightness of color is a sign of overall health. The color is due to a pigment they produce depending on the seeds they eat. Therefore, healthier males are better fed and more capable of bringing more food. The brightness of color tells the female finch that he is better suited to bring food to their young. As time passes, sexual selection will increase the frequency of bright-colored male finches. This, however, can lead to features that are overly exaggerated. It does stop, though, when an increase would reduce survival more than attracted females. Female preferences that give indirect benefits. Indirect benefits that a male can provide are his genes. Males that have those features that females prefer were probably displayed due to genes which help them survive and reproduce to a higher extent than those males who do not have these genes to display such features. In such cases, there are three types of genes that will all increase in frequency together. Genes that provide the feature as an indicator for good genes, genes that make the female prefer and be choosy towards those features, and the good genes that come and are represented with that feature. Evidence that females choose males with better genes. How do we know that the good gene model is correct? One great example is the great tree frogs experiment by Allison Welch and her colleagues at University of Missouri. Studies showed that females prefer frogs with longer calls. To test if this translated to good genes, they mated females with longer call males and with short call males. The offspring from the long caller males grew faster and survived better than those of the short call males. Females get no direct benefit from the male tree frogs since they do not provide parental care. This shows that long calls on a tree frog is a good indicator of better genes. What about the gorgeous feathers on a peacock? Males do not contribute to child care, and females prefer males with tails that have more eye spots. Marion Petrie showed that these males that had more eye spots on their tails produced young that grow faster and survive better. Females, by choosing tails with more eye spots, are choosing better genes. Good genes make these males produce these elaborate tails. Sensory bias models. Explanation for sexual dimorphisms. This explains that sexual dimorphisms exist thanks to biases in females' nervous system that were already there thanks to natural selection. Red color is generally preferred because it helped them locate ripe fruits. Therefore, they preferred the red color male bird in this instance. When red males are preferred, red males are at an advantage over different color males. Therefore, color dimorphism evolves and becomes more frequent. Females may also like novel features, like bigger size, males that hold their interest by making a more elaborate display, or oddly colored and shaped males because they stimulate their nervous system. Certain studies done with Australian grass finches, frogs, and fish all demonstrate how females sometimes have preferences for traits that they have never been exposed to before. This model, unlike the others, does not provide the females with direct or indirect benefits. But what about us, humans? Does this theory of sexual selection apply to us as well? This is a loaded and complex question, one that we will attempt to answer later on.